Hello everyone, welcome back to Ravi's biology classes. Today's topic is human heart. In this video, we will discuss about the anatomy of human heart. So first of all, we will understand about the location, the position of the human heart in the human body. Human heart is located at the center of the chest cavity. What do you call the chest cavity? We call this as the thoracic cavity also. In biology, medical terms state it is also called as mediastinum. It is called as mediastinum. Though we say that heart is located at the center of the chest cavity, that is mediastinum, but if you look at this diagram of the heart, if you look at exact position of the heart is slightly tilted towards the left. So the apex of the heart, as you can see here, it is the apex of the heart, it is shifted slightly towards the left, whereas it is the base of the heart which is at the top, it is slightly shifted towards the right. So the position of the human heart is said to be slightly shifted towards the left. Heart is a muscular organ and it is made up of a special type of muscular tissue, that is cardiac muscle tissue. The unique feature of cardiac muscle tissue is it never gets fatigued. It is also said that the size of the human heart is almost equivalent to a clenched fist. And about its function, it is the major pumping organ. What does it pump? It pumps the blood to different parts of the animal body. Now we will study about the anatomy of the human heart. Human heart is having 4 chambers. Let us see here. First, second, third and fourth. Okay. So what are these 4 chambers named as? I will write the first chamber as the atrium. Rather, first 2 chambers are called as atria, and this is called as right atrium and second one is called as left atrium. The third chamber is called as right ventricle and the fourth chamber is called as left ventricle. So what do we understand? Human heart is having 4 chambers, 2 are called as atria and 2 are the ventricles. The blood supply to this atrium and the ventricles are different. Let us see here. These blue vessels which are shaded, they supply the blood to the right atrium. What do we call these blue blood vessels? These blue blood, this one is called as inferior vena cava, whereas the blood vessel coming from the top is called as superior vena cava. Both these blood vessels empties their blood into the right atrium. And which blood they carry? They carry the carbon dioxide rich blood which is coming from the different tissues of the body. Now the right atrium receives the blood and it is filled with the blood. The second chamber of the human heart, that is left atrium, is connected by the 2 blood vessels, and these blood vessels which I am drawing with the red color, they are pulmonary veins. Now, the word pulmonary refers to lungs. Pulmonary veins, they bring the oxygen rich blood after getting oxygenated from the lungs. So, this is coming from right lung, and these two are coming from left lung, and they empty their blood into the left atrium. Both the atria are connected to their ventricles with the help of valves. These valves which are present between left atrium and the left ventricle is called as bicuspid valve. And why this is called as bicuspid valve? Because it is having two flaps which open and close the entry point of the atrium into the ventricle, or else it is also called, the other name given to the bicuspid valve is mitral valve. In a similar manner, the valve present between right atrium and right ventricle is called as tricuspid valve. Okay. The major function of these valves is to allow the blood to go from the atrium into the ventricles, but it does not allow the backflow of the blood. So, if the blood wants to go back into the atrium, this will not happen. So, it is a very important function, just not to allow any blood, any amount of blood from going back into the atrium from the ventricles. Thus, these valves are also pointed into the ventricles, or just to prevent the backflow of the blood. So, we can also have a small, so we can quickly write this thing here, that it prevents the backflow of the blood into the atrium. Now, we will also find that these valves are having some cord like structures, thread like structures, which hold on to the walls of the ventricles. These cord like structures, they are called as chordae tendineae. These cord like structures are called as chordae tendineae. The function of these thread like structures is to hold on to the walls of the ventricles and help them while the contraction is going on to pump the blood, and also they provide mechanical support to these walls of the ventricles. The carbon dioxide rich blood which is pumped into the right atrium, and from the right atrium which passes down into the right ventricle. Now, this blood has to be pumped out of the heart to get oxygenated, and the vessel that carries the blood for the oxygenation purpose is said to be the pulmonary artery. So, the major difference between artery and pulmonary artery is artery carries the oxygenated blood, but pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. But why it is called as artery? The only reason being the blood vessel that moves away from the heart are called as artery. So, this is pulmonary artery. Let us label it. One section of it branches into two parts. One branch goes to the left lung and another branch goes towards the right lung. It carries the blood for the oxygenation, but as we can see that blood goes into the pulmonary artery, there are again supported by valves. the valves present near the pulmonary artery again prevents the backflow of the blood into the ventricles. These valves are called as semilunar valve. They are called as semilunar valves. Now, the blood received by the left atrium, it also pumps its contents into the left ventricle through the bicuspid valve. After being oxygenated, the pulmonary veins brings the oxygenated blood into the left atrium. So, left atrium empties its contents into the left ventricle. Now, the left ventricle has to pump the blood out of it to different parts of the body. This oxygenated blood pumped by the left ventricle is sent to a different blood vessel. This is called as aorta. So, aorta is a huge blood vessel, is the thickest artery present, and it originates from the left ventricle. The aorta initiates from the left atrium and it carries oxygenated blood to different parts of the body. After it leaves the left ventricle, it branches out into three parts. Before letting the blood go into the aorta itself, the aorta itself is guarded by two sphincters or two valves which are present like this, as we have seen in the case of the blood which is going into the pulmonary artery. The valves present over here, they are called as aortic semilunar valve. These valves are also semilunar valve, but for differentiating them from the previous one, they are called as aortic semilunar valve. So, the previous one can also be given some other name. This valve is called as pulmonary semilunar valve. The functions of both these valves remain the same, that they prevent the backflow of the blood into the respective ventricles. As I have told you that the aorta takes the oxygen rich blood from the left ventricle and in its path it branches out into three parts. These three parts are labeled as the first one, the first, second and third. The first one is called as brachiocephalic artery. The second one is called as left common carotid artery, and the third one is called as subclavian. The third branch is called as left subclavian artery. Further, we will also see that the brachiocephalic artery, it again branches into two. The first branch of brachiocephalic artery is right common carotid artery, and the other branch is called as right subclavian artery. So, this is how the branching out of different blood vessels happen in human heart. Apart from these three branches of the aorta, the aortic arc descends down and supplies the oxygen rich blood to different parts of the human body, even to the heart. And when it supplies the blood even to the heart muscles, that artery which supplies the blood to the heart muscles is called as coronary arteries. Now, let us briefly discuss about the walls of the human heart. This one is called as right atrium and it is called as right ventricle. In the similar manner, it is called as left atrium and it is called as left ventricle. As the right atrium has to pump the blood to the right ventricle only and left atrium has to pump the blood into the left ventricle only, thus the walls of the atria, both left and right atria, are comparatively thinner as compared to the ventricles. But when we talk about the ventricles, right and left ventricles, we will see here that right ventricle has to pump the blood into the pulmonary artery which goes out for the oxygenation in the lungs. One branch goes out to the left lung and another branch goes out to the right lung. And the lungs are very closely present to the heart. Thus, the walls of the right ventricle are thinner as compared to the left ventricle. Why so? Because the left ventricle has to pump the blood, which is oxygenated blood, into the aorta, and aorta has to pump the blood to different parts of the body. Thus, the walls of the left ventricle are far more thicker as compared to the right ventricle. So, in total we can say that the walls of the left ventricle are very thick as compared to the right ventricle. Also, these walls are very elastic. They are made up of cardiac muscular tissue, so they will pump with extreme force so that the blood can reach to different parts of the body. Do you remember that I have said that human heart is four chambered? It means all these four chambers, right auricles, right atrium, right ventricle and left ventricle, all these four are completely separated from each other. These separations are called as septum and plural is septa. Ventricles are separated by interventricular septum. In the similar manner, the septum of auricle, though is not very much visible to us, but it can also be said that interauricular septum is present. Auricular septum is present, which separates these auricles and ventricles from each other. The separation concept is highly essential for the human heart. It separates the oxygen rich blood from the carbon dioxide rich blood, and about that we will understand when we will talk about the mechanism, the physiology of the human blood and the circulation of the human blood into our body. The separation of the chambers of the human heart is one of the most important and one of the most advanced features of human heart, as it is only seen in the mammals category, because until mammals no other animal has got the four chambers and they are not separated. So, the intermixing of blood is very much evident in other class of animals except for the mammals. Now, the internal lining, the ventricles are lined by this particular one is called as the endocardium. It is highly vascular. Surrounding the endocardium, we will find there is a thick muscular layer which is present over here. This muscular layer which is forming the walls of the ventricles and the atria, this is called as the myocardium. It is called as myocardium and it is made up of cardiac tissue. External to the myocardium, heart has another very important muscular layer, and this one is called as epicardium. So, these muscle layers actually protect the muscle from any kind of protection, but the contractile ability of the heart is provided by these three layers of muscles: endocardium, myocardium and epicardium. Apart from that, we will also find there is a space between these two layers, and this space is filled with a kind of fluid. This is a cavity, and this cavity is actually filled with some kind of fluid. This cavity is labeled as pericardial cavity, and the fluid which is present over here is called as pericardial fluid. Finally, we see that the outermost layer of the heart is called as the pericardium. It is actually a fibrous tissue, and it does not help in any kind of contractions of the human heart, but actually it provides the mechanical support to the human heart. The serous fluid or the pericardial fluid, it provides the mechanical support. It absorbs any kind of mechanical shocks and prevents the heart from being collapsed. So these were the layers of the human heart, about the chambers of the human heart that we have discussed in this video. So guys, in this video we have first discussed about the general features of human heart, then went into detail of the anatomy of the human heart, understood about with various blood vessels, the flow of the blood in the human heart, and finally we also discussed about the various layers of the human heart and the presence of different type of muscles in the human heart, which helps it to function in a proper manner. So guys, if you really like this video, then please subscribe to this channel and like, share, and put your comments in the comment box. See you till the next time with some more topics related to biology and science. Thank you.